So now we know that Sunderland are part of Burnley and Leeds United, three pairing that go up to the Premier League. It's exciting times ahead, exciting things to talk about. Congratulations to Sunderland. I've backed you a lot. I've backed you a lot for a long time. And congratulations to Burnley. Commiserations, I should say, to Sheffield United in this picture as well. And obviously Leeds United, my club, going up to the promised land as well. But we need to speak about the gap between the Premier League and the Championship and why maybe this has been over-egged a little bit more than it should be. First of all, do I understand it? Of course, I completely understand it. I've been one of the key contributors to this conversation. To be honest, I'm very much not liking the spread of wealth, the distribution in the Premier League and how that is creating a monstrous divide between the Premier League and the Championship. But this isn't just a 2-3 year thing. For me, this has been a 10-15 year thing with the introduction of parachute payments, the gap between the teams that go down and the rest. There is a trickle-down effect, of course there is. But I think there is a way of which you can bridge that gap. I think there's a common consensus that you go up, there's no point. And I think that is now being emphasized hugely based on the last two seasons, but there is massive context to apply to these last two seasons as well. And there's been real recent success stories as well of teams going up and doing very, very well and actually producing recruitment quality, producing consistency and momentum over a season, which the three clubs can look at and take note from. And I think actually the teams that have come down over the past 2 years, these three clubs have to look at these clubs that have come down, and Burnley looking at themselves, obviously, because they comprised of one of these teams, and take lessons, learn from that. And I think even you've seen this season with Burnley learning a little bit of a different style, pragmatism, but also a new way of playing under Scotty Parker, which has emphasised a little more of defensive solidity over the overemphasis that Vincent Kompany put on playing out from the back and being exuberant in offensive strategy, going forward and being pacey, being attacking and not really caring that much about the other side of the game, even though Burnley was still had a very good defensive record in the Championship, but really over-egging that fluidity and dynamism out wide with some of the products, Manuel Benson, etc., that they had in the Championship and trying to replicate that in the Premier League. So there's lots of bits that we can take out of this. I wanted to focus on the team that went up and everybody was kind of looking at them to just come straight back down anyway. Bottom, no points. They were going to get, absolutely battered week in, week out. And they actually did okay, and that was Luton Town acquiring only a 6-point difference to that of the 17th position team, Nottingham Forest, that season, of which Nottingham Forest finished the end of the season by getting 2 more wins in their last 5 games. That's how much the pendulum could have swung. Luton Town that year barely spent any money whatsoever on transfers. The limited budget was absolutely obvious. They prioritised physicality and athleticism, but they also prioritised the defensive structure, which actually kind of worked for Luton, with a little bit of, once again, using that exuberance, that E word, of the likes of Ross Barkley. And others going forward. You saw Carlton Morris and Adebayo have decent seasons. Alfie Doherty was absolutely superb on that left-hand side. But they just didn't have that stardust, that absolute quality that was going to get them over the line. Finished 18th, as I say. I believe it was only 6 points behind Nottingham Forest. And Forest picked up 2 wins in the last 5 games. So it could have massively changed. And that is a limited budget that Luton were working on. Lack of Premier League experience, lack of depth across the side. And on one game week, they had 11 injuries. So they were plagued by that throughout the season, and they finished 18th, and that was only a season ago. Sheffield United, a team obviously who really struggled in that season as well, 104 goals conceded, and they were just the whipping boys of the division. In the recruitment phase, then when they went up, they lost Iliman Ndiaye, which was absolutely massive. You've seen what an incredible player he is at Everton, the metronome for their football style of play, how he can pick up the ball deep and progress forward. Yesterday against Newcastle, I thought he was outstanding. I think he could play in a 9 role if he wanted. He could play out wide, but you want him in that central space. Absolutely key. He left in the summer. Sander Berger left as well. Key things to note when you're looking at Sheffield United and some of the best players been picked apart. They then invested in Cameron Archer, of which at the time was a little bit of a risk, and obviously Gustavo Hamer. And you kind of look at that and think to yourself, where are the bits of which we've learned from, even just Luton in that previous conversation? Defensively, you've got to up that rear guard. Sheffield United didn't do that. And from day dot, really failed to compete at any level with any of the other sides. So from day dot, it really felt like with the lack of Premier League experience, but the lack of real quality recruitment from abroad, they massively struggled. I looked at that Sheffield United squad from that season in particular, and it was absolutely nowhere near. At points, they were playing a 3 at the back that have Vinny Souza at the back. Obviously, Trusty left, didn't he, in the summer, but the team was nowhere good enough. You had Jack Robinson still playing in the Premier League, and you had a lot of those championship players still playing at that level, you know, and you're looking at this season when you're looking at the likes of Andre Brooks, you're looking at the likes of Arblaster, obviously, who hasn't featured that much this season, but still, you're looking at Hamer, you're looking at players like Larouci, you're looking at players like Ben Brereton Diaz, Cameron Archer, Ryan Brewster, all playing a big part for Sheffield United in the Premier League. That is not good enough recruitment. That recruitment is way off, and it was almost a bit of a poison chalice already, especially with those players taken off them in the summer window. So that's another little bit of context when you've got to apply that to the promoted teams. Recruitment, again, huge for Sheffield United. Burnley in sort of the 23-24 season as well, another team to focus on, focusing a little bit more on talents like Mdoumi, on James Trafford, which, listen, in the future, especially when you're looking at James Trafford, unbelievable in terms of trajectory, potential. They're going to get a lot of money. You buy players in like that for sell-on value as well. But it was based a lot of their recruitment on potential, not on what's happening in the here and now. And I think that's absolutely unequivocally important, especially when you're recruiting. It has to be from like top 5 leagues abroad, Premier League players, you know, or cast-offs who've maybe played in the Premier League and got good experience in the Premier League. There's certain dimensions of which you look at as a recruitment team, as a sporting director. Burnley didn't get that right, and they didn't adapt whatsoever. Vincent Kompany was playing out from the back and they were getting caught consistently. You can't do that. You've got to adapt. Similarly to what Thomas Frank did of Brentford, he came up from the Championship. They were an attacking side, and suddenly they became really more focused on set pieces and defensive solidarity, but also being, you know, really fruitful in attack with the likes of Ivan Toney and Buemo, Visser, and they were able to do that and transition to the Premier League, but having a little bit more of a pragmatic focus on their defensive play as well. These teams didn't do that, and you have to get that right, ultimately, with the foundation of recruitment being good. Now, Ipswich are an interesting one. Obviously, they finished second bottom after being third bottom for a long period of time, actually, in the Premier League, and I think they've made some really good additions. Liam Delap been a huge one. I think he's on like 11, 12 goals. That is a signing that some of the promoted teams need to get in terms of a profile and what they take a risk on and what they can perform. Julio Enciso, I think they could have got a little bit more from him, playing him centrally, but I think overall he's been a decent signing for Ipswich Town, but I think there was too much of a jump, and that will be the conversation with Sunderland. It might have come too early, but I think there's building blocks for Sunderland where they've been at this point where they've been building and building to this Premier League staple point. I think Ipswich, it was a surprise really to do it again, back-to-back promotions, and it might have come a little bit too soon. But when you look at maybe the budget and the over-reliance on sort of temporary players, when you're looking at some of these star players they brought in, not permanent signings as such, and the difficulty of moving from League One to the Premier League in such a quick span, I think that naturally affected them a little bit. But when you kind of look at their squad as well, you've got Greaves in there, you've got Leif Davis, you've got Morsey, you've got Connor Chaplin, Broadhead, George Hurst. These are just players played in the weekend when they were up against West Ham. You know, Christian Walton in there. There's not a lot of experience there whatsoever. You know, some of these haven't played a mad amount of games in the Championship either. So, you know, and then you look at the bench and it's Jack Taylor who's coming on. You've got Luongo coming on. You've got Sammy Schmodix. Do you know what I mean? You've got Cameron Burgess, Wolfenden. There's a lot to do there. A lot to do in terms of bringing up that quality of play. And once again, it comes back to recruitment. It might be a little bit harsh on Ipswich, of course, but I just think there was a little bit of an over-reliance on certain players, and that's where the recruitment's got to spread across the squad, not just at certain positions. Lost the manager, lost Keenan Dewsbury Hall, failed to replace. They really did. You know, Ruud van Nistelrooy coming in just did not work. Stevie Cooper, problems there as well. Limited transfer activity due to PSR. They really struggled to recruit when you're looking at it, but still they had players come in for a period like Buenanotte. I think El Canous is a really decent player as well. They might get some financial gain from that, but they're facing potential fine, transfer ban with what's gone on with their PSR activity. And it's just been inconsistent performances, managerial instability, and that's more context that needs to be applied with Ipswich. Southampton, you're looking at them, recruitment strategy again, has it been good enough? Going up with Russell Martin, who didn't really adapt once again. Looks like he's about to go to Leicester as well. It's just the cycle of football, but didn't adapt, was very much the Vincent Kompany mould. He left, and then Juric came in, which was a bizarre managerial appointment. And it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't in the best vein of form in terms of their sort of recruitment. I was a massive fan of Matías Fernandes, who came in from Sporting. But aside from that, there wasn't that many crystallisation when it came to signings. Diblin, if they keep hold of him, could be a good player in the Championship, but still obviously relatively unproven at Premier League level. Just not that many stars of which, aligned for Southampton again. And that relegation almost seemed unequivocally obvious from day dot, really. But ultimately, if you're Russell Martin and you are playing that brand of football, you're just going to get slaughtered week in, week out, and we saw that. And as soon as he left, it did feel like Juric coming in wasn't ever going to improve things, let's be honest. And I don't think a lot of Southampton fans took to him. But once again, it's that managerial inconsistency and that managerial stubbornness as well. I will not adapt. This is my brand. Very similar to that of Vincent Kompany. It doesn't work for teams who don't have technical players at the level of the other 17. Doesn't work. So they're the teams that got relegated. And this isn't to say, by the way, doing this video, everybody, that all three teams are going to stay up. That's not what I think, and that will not happen. I don't think that will happen. But I think one of these teams has a chance, whether or not that's Sunderland, Burnley or Leeds, of staying in the Premier League. And we're going to get onto the teams that did stay up and the reasons why they did stay up as well. So for me, recruitment strategy is absolutely massive. Huge in this game right now, and you have to get it spot on. That's unequivocally obvious. You've got to balance the recruitment when it comes to Premier League experience and getting some players from abroad that profile-wise are going to completely fit into the Premier League and hit the ground running. Has to be a balance of youth and experience. That's pretty clear to me. I think a lot of the relegated teams have either overspent on unproven talent or failed to invest, in my opinion, adequately, leading to a hell of a lot of squad deficiencies. When you look at the successful teams in comparison to the non-successful teams, you will see the difference in recruitment. And this was only 3 years ago as well. So you look at the depth and experience when it comes to certain personnel out. There's a reason that these teams get relegated. You have to have effectively two decent players in every single position, and that is kind of what you're going to be looking at, because if a player is out, you have to replace him with quality. But let's start with Nottingham Forest, and when we go back to 22-23, these promoted teams, all of them stayed up. This isn't 10 years ago, it's not 15 years ago, it's not 20 years ago, 3 years ago. That's all it was. The last 2 years, all of them have been relegated. For me, that doesn't signify a gap, although I know the gap is naturally big because of the financial side of things. But I think when you're looking at, let's say if this happened for a period of 5 to 6 to 7 years, when you're looking at every single team getting relegated, you could even say if there's one team that stays up in 5 years, that's a problem. But 3 years ago, 3 teams stayed up in one season. And for me, there's a correlation with them all. Forest did it in a ridiculous way. 28 new players, and they probably knew they were going to break that PSR problem and they were going to get a points deduction or they were going to get something. They did that. They took the risk and it has worked, but it is a massive risk. But some of the players that they brought in, Onyewu, the striker, got 10 goals that season. Taiwo did very, very well, was a focal point for them, physical, absolute monster when it comes to getting Forest up the pitch, and they dotted him with players in and around him like the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. What an addition that was. You look at Dean Henderson, obviously he was brought in, the spine of Forest there already. Henderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, Onyewu. You've got players in there already who can work in a sense of really building, not only having quality, but having players who can really dig in and players who have experience at top level. When you look at Onyewu, brought in from Union Berlin as well. But then when you look at mid-season as well, they brought in Danilo. That is the spine of the team from Palmeiras. Renan Lodi, who came in at left-back from Atletico Madrid. That is quality additions. Top-level experience everywhere, top-level quality. So Forest got that absolutely spot on. Then you look at Onyewu getting 10 goals, Brennan Johnson getting 8 that season, Morgan Gibbs-White getting 5 goals. That is a good side. It's a good framework, and they've added to it. And yes, they brought in 28 players, but the key players worked because of recruitment. Now, Bournemouth were another one who stayed up that season. Jefferson Lerma was superb for them, adding set-piece threat, but scoring 5 goals. Onyx Solanke obviously getting 6 goals that season, and Phil Billing. That is a big level of your spine again in that central space. Phil Billing getting 8 goals that season. You look at Tavernier, who came in from Borough, an unbelievable signing, someone who is very good on set pieces. Another thing, 3 of the bottom 5 teams in terms of set pieces this season with the teams that came up. That's a disgrace. But then the likes of Marcos Senesi coming in was a really big signing. Obviously, a defender brought in from Feyenoord who worked, he hit the ground running. And of course, the experienced goalkeeper from Barcelona, Neto. Some really good pieces of recruitment there from Bournemouth, and the framework being kept consistent. I absolutely saw them stay in the division with a really good finish of 15th, ensuring Premier League survival. Fulham, when you're looking at this lot brought up, I mean, I've just got some of the players listed down here. João Palhinha, a defensive midfielder brought in from Sporting. Again, maybe something that Southampton try to replicate with bringing Fernandes in from Sporting. You know, you look at where he's got now, Palhinha, what an unbelievable signing. Andreas Pereira from Man United, attacking midfielder, adding creativity, an industrious way and steel in that midfield, and still plays for them today, obviously. Bernd Leno, what an unbelievable signing that was from Arsenal. Willian brought in as well. Free transfer, bringing in veteran leadership. Everyone raised their eyebrow at that, but what a signing that was. And Carlos Vinicius as well. And not only did you have that, but you've got Mitrovic banging 14 goals in that season. You've got obviously Willian adding 5 goals and Andreas Pereira adding 4 goals. That is top recruitment, and they achieved 10th spot. 10th spot that season. You know, which is, it's absolutely huge, isn't it? And you can see the levels in recruitment between those three that stayed up in 22, 23, and Leeds went down, it was their 3rd season in the Premier League. In the time that Leicester had been in the Premier League, which was 10 to 12 years, they'd won the Premier League, they'd won the FA Cup, and they were in Europe. Southampton, I believe, had been in the Premier League even longer, had players like Dani Osvaldo in that period, Adam Lallana, Lambert, Van Dijk, Klein. This was a Morgan Schneiderlin, a very good Southampton team who had Pochettino there as well. So these were established Premier League sides who, very similarly to next season, if you're looking at the 3 coming up, they could drag teams like Wolves in. They can drag teams like West Ham in. Who'd have thought in that period of time, Leicester and Southampton would have gone down if you apply the context of that season? No one would have thought that at the start of the season. Absolutely no. No one would have put Leeds down there either. You'd have thought 3 years ago that the teams coming up are going to go straight back down. That is not what happened. They all absolutely nailed recruitment. They got it absolutely spot on. That is exactly what needs to happen this season for you, Sunderland, Burnley and Leeds United. Strategic recruitment, managerial stability. I've got down here financial prudence and building squad with depth and experience. You look at the contrasting approaches of all the 6 in comparison to those 3, and it is vast. You cannot underscore the importance of these factors and principles in navigating Premier League survival. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Really fascinated to hear what you think on this one. My name's been Conor McGilligan. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.